everybody, Tony D and Little Joe with your Hollywoke hot take. All things Hollywood, all things Hollywoke. We're going to get into it. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Please check out my books. Wokistan, a novel, now on audiobook. Hollywoke, another novel, both political satire about some of the stuff we talk about here. And of course, the Pineys, books 1 through 6, comedy, horror in South Jersey. Book 7 dropping this month. On July 15th, I will have a signing at the Sunrose Bookstore in Ocean City, New Jersey. That's at 756 Asbury Ave. It's like 7th and Asbury. It's kind of near the corner. So come on down from 10 to 12 on July 15th and maybe get a signed book. Maybe get a signed book, right, Little Joan? Here, you want to come over here? Come over here for this, or are you going to get all squirmy on me? All right. We're going to do Hollywoke hot take, Joan. Here we go. Obama's Reading film and TV event Blackout for Netflix. The scripted project will focus on 6 love stories, each penned by a different writer. Okay. I mean, I don't know why the Obamas were hired to develop film and TV at all. No offense. I mean, what roles do they have? I mean, other than being rich. I mean, certainly they can produce it, I guess. But seems like this is kind of just a bit of a payoff for the Obama family. I mean, it's not uncommon in Hollywood for people to have their name attached to things simply because they have a name and nothing else. They do nothing they just basically pick up a paycheck. Could this be one of the things? I don't know. So I often find it misleading when they go, oh, this is presented by this famous person. And it's just like they're probably just essentially renting their name. So I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound bad, right? That sounds like it could be good. 6 different writers. I mean, one of them will have to be good, right? One of them will probably be awful and the rest will be okay. That's usually the way it goes. It's a weird name, though. Blackout. That sounds like more of a thriller, right? Like, blackout. Like, all the lights go out and then there's a murder. Over at Bleeding Fool, Sony adapting ultra-violent Faust comic into animated series. I have met Tim Vigil, the creator, several times. And let me tell you something. He is a total riot. He's a total kook. I really like him. I don't know how they're going to make this cartoon, though. I really don't. It is really violent. Like, you see guts pouring out of people. I mean, it's basically like if Wolverine just killed everybody. Ooh, getting kind of rumbly here, Joan. Don't worry, I'll protect you. Yeah, so I don't know how this is going to go. But good for Tim Vigil to get a paycheck. I hope he gets a lot of money. He deserves it. He's a funny guy. Sesame Street teams with Jill Biden to lecture military families on how to teach racial literacy to kids. Oh, this is just total train wreck. First off, why are we teaching kids who are in military families specifically? That seems a bit odd. Why is Sesame Street involved? Jill Biden is like, Dr. Jill Biden was supposed to be this first lady who was going to do all these exciting things. Is this the best thing she could come up with? Seems a bit much. And I don't think children need to be taught racial literacy. What the hell is that? Sounds like critical race theory to me. That's what I'll assume it is. And how are you going to teach it with Muppets? I don't know. They've teamed up to bring identity politics into military families by helping parents discuss race and racism with their children and to develop kids' sense of racial literacy. God, I hate that term. The new project, which is part of a diversity initiative co-organized by USAA, includes various online resources that instructs families on dealing with bias and unfairness, according to Sesame Street's workshop. Really? Little kids, you're going to teach this stuff? You just teach kids to share and be nice to one another. That's it. They don't need much more than that. Share your toys. Be nice. Kevin Feige. We want to showcase LGBTQ characters in the MCU. more of them have superpowers for some reason. You know, the MCU, they were all backloaded because the new woke regime. They ignored the ones that were already there. They ignored North Star, just about. I mean, North Star was the gay character in the Marvel Universe. It was a big event when he got married in the 80s, I think. 80s or early 90s. That was back when Claremont was still in the book. That was when it was edgy. Claremont did great work. The current regime at Marvel, they can't, they're going back and retrofitting some of these guys. What they did to Iceman is a disgrace. Okay? The character just wasn't gay. He just wasn't gay. There was no evidence for it. They shouldn't have backloaded him. They could have created new guys if they needed to. And there were plenty of guys, quite frankly, in the Marvel Universe that get no attention at all that could have come out as gay. But they won't do that because it had to be a famous guy. See, they can't present this stuff. They can't just present it because they know it doesn't sell. They feel they need to load it up with someone famous or a character that's famous. And ultimately, all they do is piss off the old fans, and the new fans go, oh, really? Okay. You're pandering. Thanks. So, this is just pandering. You know? Make some gay characters if you want characters to be gay. And make them not all about their gayness. Or LGBTQ, whatever. There are characters like that in both the DC and Marvel universe. But they're ignored because they weren't all that popular. It's hard to have a popular character. But okay, keep at it. Again, U.S. military to teach which Jill Biden will lecture about race is more diverse than the federal government. It's just poor Grover. Spike Lee pushes the narrative that black people are being hunted down like animals by the police, calls Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Jair Bolsonaro. How do you say that first name? Bolsonaro. Gangsters. Yeah, world leaders are kind of gangsters in their own way. What's your point? You know, what would be ballsy is if he called Biden a gangster too. I don't know, maybe he did. You know, everything gets slanted in the media. You know, Spike was nice to me, so I have a special place in my heart for him, even though I don't particularly agree with his views. You know, he pushes his thing, and he's done what he's done for a long time. You know, whatever. This is how he gets people involved in his movies. I mean, the sad thing is for him, now everybody's doing his thing. It's kind of like when Bart Simpson, you know, everybody in town, the self-help guy said, be like Bart, and then everybody kind of co-opted his personality. It's kind of what's happened in Hollywood with Spike Lee's attitude, in a way. Spike was always like pretty brazen and said stuff that woke say all the time. Although he said it in a slightly different way, I would say. A little smarter way. You know, compared to the woke, I mean, Spike Lee is a lot smarter. Sometimes he says stupid stuff, but I think, you know, he's a little more grounded. Again, I'm biased. He was nice to me, you know. But now he's trying to, you know, he's got to out-left the lefties, and that's going to be tough. Look at it. Look at the beret. That's funny. Rob Schneider risks blacklist railing against coronavirus vaccine. Yeah, he's been tweeting quite a storm. So, you know, again, if you had told me 10, 15 years ago, oh, you're going to be a big fan of Rob Schneider, I would have been like, Rob Schneider? Seriously? But, you know, the guy's made a name for himself speaking truth to power, you know, actually doing it. And is it a grift too? Maybe. I mean, maybe you could say it is, but I think it's genuine coming from him, from what I've seen. I think it's genuine coming from Spike too. He's just got a different political view. So, you know, he's been posting a ton of stuff about the virus. So follow Rob. He also posted pretty base stuff in general. Donald Trump, speaking of based, scores First Amendment win in fake news meme case. Good. New York judge finds that meme of two toddlers was newsworthy. It was. And that's a big win for Carpe Diem, who I think made the meme. So, good for you, DJT. Cher launches America hating fake news tirade about voter integrity laws. I've always known we were a racist country. Okay, whatever. Suicide Squad director James Gunn describes most current superhero movies as boring. Are you including your movies in that? Look, I like James Gunn up to a point. I thought The Guardians was a good movie. That was him, right? The Suicide Squad, I can't get into. I mean, again, I don't want to go into it again, but long story short, it's just the premise would have worked if DC had made that movie down the road, downstream, after you established a bunch of characters and then threw in a bunch of villains too. But, you know, it's kind of the sort of movie or the sort of comic book that only worked at DC. Like, in the DC universe, it worked great because you're reading all these crazy comics about superheroes and they got all these villains and they can never use them all. And then the Suicide Squad comes along, sort of flipped the script and made them, you know, the heroes in a weird way, but also used them, all these obscure villains that nobody really cared about. But, like, movie audiences, they don't really know these guys. Not like the comic guys. We knew them. We knew who Captain Cold was. Captain Cold, I haven't seen him in years. Oh, I'm going to read the Suicide Squad. You know, stuff like that. And it brought this other dimension to the comic and the DC universe in general. But, you know, the Hollywood guys, they just don't get comics in my view. Jackie Chan tells China, I want to be a communist too. I thought he was already a Chinese citizen, right? I guess he's a citizen of Hong Kong. Look, this is his home country. He can't just leave, right? And again, I don't support the communists in any way, but, you know, what's he supposed to do? He's got family probably all over in China. If he can't just leave. They're probably watching him like a hawk. He's key to communism because he's a worldwide figure. They're not going to let anything happen to him as long as he plays ball. They're not going to let anything happen to his family. He suddenly decides, oh, I'm an American now. F you. Ooh, the Chinese will come down on him like a ton of bricks. Not to mention that he made his bones in Chinese films. So he's in a tough position. You know, and is he going to speak out against China? I mean, it's way more complicated than him. I mean, he'd be the only guy in Hollywood I'd say, okay, slow down. It's complicated for Jackie, right? I mean, I'd support him 100% if he did defect and brought his family and whatever, but that he's not, I mean, he's got a lot at stake, more at stake than most people. He's definitely got family. And the communists, it would be a huge loss if they lost Jackie. They would hunt down every person he ever talked to in China. He would go after friends and associates, and he lived there, you know, at the beginning of his life, is my understanding, at least in Hong Kong. You know, he probably knows everybody everywhere. And his career, not to mention his career would be done. The Chinese would feel betrayed. They never distribute his movie. I mean, if he wanted to retire, maybe he could do it. And look, he's got the money. He should do it. But I'm not going to blast him for it only because, you know, he might have his parents might live somewhere where the communists can get him. They certainly can get people in Hong Kong now. So maybe he thinks he can go into the communist world and do something positive. I don't think you can, Jackie. I think you'd be better off getting your family the F out of China. But, you know, what are you going to do? Disney claiming Black Widow broke $200 million opening weekend. This is the first headline I've seen where it's like, this is bleeding fool, but where they're saying, you don't know if they made $200 million. $60 million of that was the streaming service. I think it was $80 million domestic and like $60 million international, something like that. So combined, about $200 million. Did they? Maybe. Who knows? It probably cost them at least that much to make. So, but the thing is, yeah, it says $215 million gross. The movie studios have been playing fast and loose with the books for years. I'm sure it made enough. They go both ways. I think they exaggerate their profits and they exaggerate how much money they spent in order to save those exaggerated profits. So I don't think you could, unless you drilled down into the books, you wouldn't really know. And the big scam, of course, is they'll, if you have points in a movie, the movie's never going to show a profit, no matter how many points you have. They're mostly worthless because after they pay off everybody who went on the promotional tour, right? So Scarlett is going to go on a promotional tour and they're going to pay her a fortune. And that is charged back to the movie's profits. So when the profits come in, they're gone. That's how it works. And it's not that they're just paying her plane ticket in a hotel room. Oh, no. Scarlett Johansson, she's going to have an entourage. She's going to have her own makeup person and hair person. She's going to have her family with her. She's going to have food and, friends. I mean, literally, a personal assistant. It's basically going to be her buddy who's going to help her do everything because she has so much to do. You cannot imagine what these people go through. And I'm not, saying, oh, these poor people. But, I mean, they're paid very well and they make millions and millions of dollars. But it's top echelon, man. She's got to be all day, doing interview after interview, saying the same things over and over again in different ways. And she needs to bring that energy every single time. If she drops the ball in even one interview, it'll be all over the internet like, oh, look at Scarlett Johansson getting pissed off at this reporter. Ha ha ha. So it's, she makes a lot of money, but she earns it. She works hard. All these celebrities, for these press junkets, it's just not eating caviar and hanging out. They're working, but it's very expensive. And so the movie studio is going to pay her money, pay all her people money. Oh man, all her expenses get paid. It's probably great when you go back and look at it. And then she gets time off. And then, when she goes to con or goes on a movie promotion, that's not vacation. I did that on a smaller scale when I would do my conventions, right? I'd go somewhere. It's not a vacation. You're working. You're talking to people. You're talking to fans. You're working. And it's mentally taxing. It may not be physically taxing, but it's mentally taxing. You got to present. You got to have energy up. You got to grab a bathroom and a sandwich or whatever you can. You got to keep working it until it's over, and then you go home. You're like, oh. So it's not no work, I'll say. But that all being said, I have zero interest in seeing Black Widow. I stand by my initial assessment. The money was surprising, if true. But, yeah. Anyhow, 15 woke Hollywood celebrities who hobnob with vacation promoted movies in communist Cuba. Let's see what the list. I talked about this in my other video a little bit. Do they have a specific list? Who is this? Oh my God, it's Jay-Z and Beyonce. They do have the list. Not cool, but they're selling records. Rihanna, Kate Perry, of course, Steven Spielberg, Mick Jagger. Mick. Look at Mick. He's funny. Ludacris and Usher. Conan O'Brien. Of course, he did it. Conan in Cuba. Kevin Costner. Oh, is that Sean Penn? Sean Penn. Kevin Costner shaking Fidel Castro's hand. Man, that's weird. That was to promote 13 Days. Robert Redford. Danny Glover, of course. Harry Belafonte. Oliver Stone. And that's it. There's probably more. You forgot Michael Moore. Does he count as a celebrity anymore? Look, there's money to be made there in these communist regimes. And there is some thought like, well, you go and hopefully they see what America's like and maybe you soften the regime so much. It's like when Dennis Rodman went to South Korea or North Korea. It opens up something. So they're not all... I'm not going to, chastise all these people. Kind of depends on why they go. A lot of it's just money. They're going to shoot a film there. They're going to, but the problem is it's a communist regime. Guess where all the money goes, right? Even if you're just opening a movie there or playing a concert, someone's going to make a ton of money, but the regime's going to make that money too. And then that money goes to oppressing people. So you got to make up your own mind. I say, don't help the regime. Someone like Rihanna, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and the Rolling Stones. Don't play Cuba. I know you got Cuban fans, but the money is not going to them. The concert's not free. You're making money for the regime, whether you want to admit it or not. And I get it. You have fans there, and you want the fans to be happy, and maybe you brighten their sunny days or whatever. But, nah. It's probably not a good thing if you really sit back and look at it. Finally, Black Widow actor says he doesn't know how anyone could disagree with socialist ideology. Man, David Harbour, he's doubling down. I don't know if there's anyone who could disagree with socialist ideology. Probably because David Harbour doesn't really understand what it is. David Harbour, who played the Soviet super soldier Red Guardian in Marvel's film Black Widow, brought the character's ideological playbook to life when he said that he doesn't know how anyone could disagree with socialist ideology. During the interview published by The Guardian on July 3rd, he told the outlet, again, how many times you got to quote him? Maybe the post-millennial can't believe he said it. He quoted him like 3 times. If you work at Starbucks and you make the coffee, then you should own it. You're the one making the coffee. Wow, that is the most woke-tarded thing I've ever heard. Harbour told the publication, no, you don't own it. Do you own the coffee? If David Harbour goes into Starbucks, he doesn't own the coffee. Even if he goes behind the counter and makes it. If I go to your house, David Harbour, and I make myself a sandwich, do I own the food? No, you own it. You let me in your house to make a sandwich, I would assume. What a ridiculous statement. Harbour went on to admit communism can be a lot like fascism due to its implementation. Real communism hasn't been tried. But he believes communism could be different. Wow. And this is him. I added that little bit. The fact that the implementation of these things has led to some of the deepest fascism in our society, so people assume that communism means fascism to a certain degree. That's a terrible thing, Harbour said. Oh, God. David, dude. He's a real communism hasn't been tried guy. That's what he is. Harbour, who previously achieved fame with his role in Stranger Things, likened his idea of more ideal socialism being back in kindergarten. Yeah, you have to be in kindergarten to believe in socialism. The idea of kindergarten-type society where we share things is my ideal society, as opposed to a world where we're hunting and killing and destroying our own personal hoarding or your own personal good, Harbour stated. Wow. Just wow, dude. I don't know if he's posing or if he really thinks that, but again, it all goes back. I saw this amazing TikTok that was reposted on Twitter, because I don't have TikTok, of a guy explaining communism, and just, he was just like this. He was just like, oh, it hasn't been tried correctly. The other regimes, they messed it up. This is exactly what the communists always say. Oh, it hasn't really been tried. No. There were problems, but, it could work. It can only work if everybody decides to share power. And how do you get to do that? How do you make a guy share power? Like, Stalin came from nothing, and he ruthlessly rode to the top. He was just some idiot itinerant farmer guy. Basically. Not even a farmer, but just some rando. He just was ruthless enough to go, oh, the Central Committee, I would get to pick who's a real communist or not. Okay, I'll be that guy. And then, voila, he was in charge. Because that's how communism works, right? There's got to be a guy who's there to say, well, this is communism. Oh, that's capitalism. He became that guy. And next thing you know, all his political rivals weren't communist enough for him. And that's where it starts. And wouldn't matter if we had capitalism or communism, the same psychopaths rise to the top. Because they're psychopaths. And they ruthlessly look around for what can get them power. And then they do that. So, in our current dynamic, What gets you power? Well, under critical race theory and intersectional feminism, being the most marginalized. This is why in Wokistan, our main villain, quote unquote, is G, who is gender fluid, Muslim atheist, disabled, woman of color. She's everything. Every adjective we could possibly put in the LGBT rainbow, we put on G for a reason. Because that, in that world, made her queen of it. Right? She was so woke, she didn't even have a name. She just had a letter G. It could stand for guy, girl, gender. You couldn't pinpoint her. That was the whole point. And in that world, someone like her ruthlessly rises to the top because she sees the ways to get to the top and she just follows that path. And that's what sociopaths do, psychopaths. So it doesn't matter the system you set up, except under capitalism, under a merit-based system, the people who tend to rise to the top, yes, psychopaths do rise to the top, but lots of people do. So there's always competition. And eventually, the choice is, well, do you want to follow a psychopath or do you want to follow a guy who's pretty ruthless, kind of like a psychopath, but he's actually a nice guy? And, there's a balance there. And there are guys who, I think Trump is one of those guys. Trump is, an egotist, but he's not a psychopath. He's a family man. He's got kids and he's had wives. He still got married. I don't know why. So that grounded him enough. Does he share traits with the ruthless, power hungry? Absolutely he does. Because that's how you get to the top. You got to be kind of ruthless about it. And Trump understands that. But he has his limits. But he also does things I can't do. Like, I could not have approved the Soleimani assassination. I totally disagree with it. But I can't argue with the results. Soleimani was a bad dude. I don't know. Maybe I would have caved under the pressure, and the generals would have said, no, kill him. Ordering, a kill strike. That's tough to do. But, there's a lot of nuance here. But what Harbor, I think, is promoting is a utopian vision that can't be achieved. Now, whether or not he's doing that, he actually believes that, or he just is saying it because, well, this is going to help my career. He is an actor. Keep that in mind. And he's a pretty good one. But, I can't support him if he's going to go down this path at all. And not in the future. And this is really going to hurt him in the future. This is going to hurt his prospects in the future. So, David, save your money, buddy. Because I think you're going to need it. And that's it for the Hollywood Hot Take. Hollywoke Hot Take. Joan and I will see you in the next one.